FBI continues its investigation into the deadly shooting of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. There are close eyes watching the director of the agency, Kash Patel, who's faced increased scrutiny over his handling not just of this case, but his job overall. Back with us, Rob D'Amico, Rachel Bade. Rob, I want to get to you first. There's a lot of reporting out there and also public statements from pretty influential conservative figures that Patel's behavior has eroded trust in the Bureau and his ability to do this job. What are you hearing within FBI ranks right now?
When Kash Patel first took over the Bureau, there was a lot of agents that wanted change, that saw that the Bureau was going ways that they hadn't seen in a while, and they wanted it back, so to speak. And a lot of them were retired or senior agents, and they wanted to give Kash Patel a chance because his qualifications were coming up as lacking in that ability. Everything I saw, LinkedIn, Facebook groups with FBI, some were against it, but the majority were like, "Hey, give him a chance." And what I see now is that is eroding heavily within current FBI and former FBI. And the current ones it actually started eroding quicker because the firings and some of the other things that were going on that they heard internally. The retired ones who have friends that they talk to in the Bureau, I think we're still giving a chance. And I think the firing of Driscoll and the other ones, and Driscoll's a friend of mine. He was HRT commander. He was on HRT when I was there. Very well respected. When they were fired without due cause, even the Agent Association, the Society of Former Agents came out with formal letters. And I think that really was a big step for everyone to say, wait a second, these people are patriots. They've been doing their job. And I just don't think that they understand how an agent can still work, can have certain political views, but it doesn't involve their work. There was some of that in there, but I don't think they could think someone working on the January 6th trial or one of the trials on Trump actually was in support of Trump. But you're told to do a job, you're FBI, you're apolitical, and you do it. I don't think they can comprehend that. I think they thought anyone working on that was anti-Trump, and they're not. Some of the people he fired were extremely conservative in their personal beliefs. But you just didn't know that at work. You never really talked politics. So I really think it's eroding. I think we've hit that, and I think now what you saw with the post on X that he's in custody and having to take that back has now, spread that maybe questioning over to the White House and other folks.
And Rachel, that's why I want to bring you in. Last night, our colleague Ryan Riley had some really interesting reporting that Patel was at Rao's, this very fancy restaurant in New York City, the night of the post. So Patel tweeted at 6:21 that the subject in Kirk's killing was in custody. He tweeted at 7:59 that the, quote, subject in custody has been released after an interrogation by law enforcement. The restaurant opens at 7 p.m. If the FBI and the rank and file is concerned a little bit about Patel, how he has operated over the last few days, how is the president and how is the White House taking this in? Because one thing Donald Trump hates to be is embarrassed by folks that work for him.
Yeah, definitely doesn't like to be embarrassed, and these are not good looks.
Yeah.
I can't speak directly to what Donald Trump thinks about him right now. I can tell you that there are some people in the administration who are definitely frustrated. And I think Kash Patel, he's feeling it right now. And you can see it in the reporting. I mean, there was this great nugget in a New York Times story yesterday or the day before about how he erupted and yelled at 200 agents across the country who were working on this case because he said they didn't tell him that there was a picture of the suspect, even though apparently it was in his briefing stuff the whole time. But in a lot of ways, he's going to have to look in the mirror here because he cleaned house and he got rid of a bunch of experts who had been at the FBI for a long time, who had a lot of experience working on counterterrorism cases, domestic counterterrorism cases, specifically the one who was running the Salt Lake City office. And there are consequences to that when you get rid of people like he did. That's going to impact the investigation. And obviously, it wasn't the FBI that nabbed this guy. It was that they released the photos, and the father of this man was the one who helped turn him in. So, look, they're going to have to contend with this, and it's not a great look.
Rachel, just to put a finer point on it, Patel wasn't at just any restaurant. Rayo's is one of the notoriously hardest restaurants to get into. So there's a whole exclusivity part to this story that I find interesting. But Eugene asked you about Patel standing within the White House.
Sure.
But what about Patel standing within the right-wing base of the party? I mean, this is a base that is still very upset about what has happened or not happened with the Epstein files. So could we be seeing what Patel is doing as a reaction to try to win back their favor or to get them to get off his back?
He's absolutely seen an erosion with support with the base. I mean, this is a guy who was a hero for MAGA world, a podcaster out there talking before, Trump took over. It was back in the White House talking about the Epstein files. And as you mentioned, he's already been getting grilled on the right because of that. And people sort of feeling that they're not being transparent about what went on with Epstein. Add this on top of that. And yeah, people are not happy. And you can see it if you look on Twitter at a lot of conservative commentators on Twitter who are saying it's time for us, people who support the Trump administration, to have a discussion about whether he's the right person to lead the FBI. So will it matter, I guess, is the question. It didn't matter with Attorney General Pam Bondi. I mean, we saw even more heat from her regarding Epstein, and the president stuck with her. So all that really matters is what Donald Trump thinks. And it's not yet clear if Trump would be displeased with him. At this point, they're still putting out statements for a lot of these stories saying that they're with him.
And I think in that same New York Times story that you were talking about, it was in that story that it was noted that when the president was talking about, I think it was the capture of the suspect, he mentioned everybody, particularly Pam Bondi, but didn't mention the FBI.
What you just watched wasn't a normal update. It was a live autopsy of FBI leadership in real time. The manhunt is now the easy part of the story. The hard part is the slow-motion credibility collapse around the guy who is supposed to be running the country's premier investigative service. Kash Patel is under the microscope, and not just because agents are still vacuuming fibers and lifting palm impressions off a campus ledge in Orem. He is under the microscope because his public flubs and private temper have turned an already fraught case into a referendum on his competence. That is not me editorializing. That is the story law enforcement veterans, rank and file agents, and even conservative media are telling out loud. Start with the tape. Investigators walked through the shooter's escape like a film class. The step to the far right corner, the drop off the roof, the smudged palm impressions where skin hit the edge, a clean outsole bite from what appears to be Converse with white on the sole, the black tee with a flag and eagle, the triangle logo on the cap, and the sunglasses that hide a face but not a habit. Then the route across the grass and into the trees where a bolt-action rifle was recovered. That is what actual police work looks like when you are building a case the boring way. It is specific, it is tangible, and it does not need a podium stunt to feel impressive. Now lay that beside Patel's part of the plot. He went online and told the country the subject was in custody. He wasn't. 2 separate men were detained and released. Utah officials were still telling people a manhunt was active, and within 90 minutes, Patel had to correct himself and admit the person had been let go after questioning. It was sloppy. It also turned into a perfect metaphor for everything that has followed. When the director of the FBI treats an assassination like a live tweet, you don't just create confusion, you degrade trust in the channel you are going to need for the next ask. If you thought that was the end of the bad optics, MSNBC and other outlets had another nugget. Around the same window, Patel was posting and retracting. He was reportedly at Rouse in New York, the kind of place that opens at 7 and does not seat you unless your name has its own area code. There is a difference between working dinner and Rouse during a manhunt while you are posting wrong information to X. Law enforcement vets said it out loud. Investigations are not supposed to be run on social media and certainly not between courses. Inside the Bureau, patience is thin. The New York Times reported that Patel erupted on a call, ripping into roughly 200 agents for not showing him a suspect photo sooner, even though, according to the reporting, it was in his briefing packet the entire time. Former agents who actually ran field operations heard that and winced. Apolitical is the rule, process is the rule. If the top guy keeps acting like a podcaster who wandered into a command post, morale and judgment both bleed out. And then there is the thing nobody at Maine Justice wants to talk about during a murder case, but everybody in the ranks is whispering about. This is not happening in a vacuum. 3 senior FBI officials filed a federal lawsuit this week saying they were purged for failing a political loyalty test. They named Patel and Attorney General Pam Bondi. They described White House pressure. They said out loud what everyone suspected, that firings were about who worked Trump cases, not who worked well. When you fire experience and then ask the public to bet their safety on your judgment, do not act surprised when they start counting your mistakes out loud. Even Patel's base is wobbling. This was supposed to be their guy, a MAGA folk hero who would bend the Bureau back into shape, produce long-promised Epstein disclosures, and punish enemies. Instead, you have conservative commentators on X openly asking if he is the right person to lead the FBI after the manhunt missteps, and a White House that is suddenly very quiet about who deserves credit when the suspect is actually caught. When allies stop clapping on cue, it is not a good week. Meanwhile, the facts of the case have advanced without Patel's flair. The suspect is Tyler Robinson, 22, a white Mormon kid from a conservative family. His father recognized him from the FBI stills, confronted him, and with help from a pastor who is also a U.S. Marshals Task Force officer, got him to the point where the feds could take him alive. CBS and ABC are consistent on the key detail. He confessed to his father and initially said he would rather die than surrender. He is now booked on aggravated murder and related counts and faces the possibility of the death penalty under Utah law. The arrest came because video, tips, and a family intervention converged, not because a director posted a premature victory lap. The governor says the public response was a flood. More digital media tips than any case since Boston. Thousands of leads, enough to overwhelm any normal team if you are not careful about triage. When you are begging for clean, time-stamped files, you need a public that trusts you. That is why a bad post from the guy at the top costs more than a few dunk tweets. It makes the next ask harder. It makes the next campus witness wonder if they are sending their clip to professionals or to a timeline. There is also the part where Congress smells blood. Patel is headed for oversight hearings, and the headline is not subtle. Missteps in the Kirk probe, turmoil at the FBI, and a director who will have to convince skeptical lawmakers he knows how to steady the place he already shook. The Associated Press is not in the habit of writing cable news hot takes. When AP calls your false assurance more than a slip, that is the institutional way of saying this isn't a one-off. It is the brand. If you are keeping a scorecard, here is the split screen MSNBC was really showing you. In the evidence column, you have palm impressions, outsole matches, distinctive clothing, an escape path, a recovered rifle, and a community that basically became an auxiliary crime lab overnight. In the leadership column, you have a director who posted wrong information, had to retract it, allegedly chewed out hundreds of agents on a call, and now faces bipartisan doubts while his own political base toys with turning on him. That is a gap you can drive a convoy through. And yes, the grieving and the politics collided again. The White House initially went hard at the radical left before there was a suspect, then got quieter as the identity landed and did not fit the script. By the time a reporter asked the president how he was coping, the answer drifted into a casual boast about a new White House ballroom. If you are the family of the dead man who spent a decade running turnout ops for that very president, that answer lands like a punchline you did not ask for. None of this helps Patel look steadier. If anything, it makes him look more alone. Here's the part that matters for the next chapter, because this story does not end with a perp walk. The Bureau still has to close the evidentiary loop the slow way. Ballistics must tie that bolt action to the projectile. Trajectory math must settle the exact firing point. The palm impressions and any touch DNA need to survive lab scrutiny. The clothing and cap that look distinctive on camera need provenance in the real world. The Discord logs and inscriptions on casings being reported by multiple outlets need to stand up under chain of custody and expert testimony, not just screenshots. If you want a conviction that survives appeal, the case file has to read like a machine. That is why the MSNBC walkthrough of the video was the most important thing they aired. It was an advertisement for how to do this the grown-up way. The scandal, to the extent the word fits, is not that an FBI director ate dinner. It is that the country is being asked to believe the Bureau can be apolitical and rigorous, while the person at the top behaves like a political operative with a social media problem. You can believe in change and still believe in competence. You can hate the deep state and still demand your homicide updates be right the first time. You can support the president and still expect the director to act like a director. Those are not contradictory ideas. They are the minimum. So yes, the MSNBC panel's point lands. Trust is a currency, and Patel is spending it faster than he can earn it back. Retired HRT commanders and field supervisors do not throw around words like patriot lightly. When they say the purge of experienced leadership hurt capacity, that is worth more than 1,000 influencer threads. When the Society of Former Special Agents publishes letters and the AP and Washington Post put daylight on your missteps, The problem is no longer bad press. It is institutional, it is operational. You cannot rescue that with a tweet. If you are cutting this as a voiceover, land here. The manhunt produced a suspect because cameras and citizens did their jobs. The prosecution will rise or fall on science and chain of custody. The Bureau's reputation will rise or fall on leadership. Kash Patel is walking into hearings next week carrying not just a case file, but a record of self-inflicted wounds, from a wrong way post to a restaurant cameo to a conference call meltdown. He can still salvage this by letting the adults run the investigation and by telling the truth in public the first time. If he doesn't, the country will do what it always does when leaders confuse the job with the show. It will trust the evidence and stop trusting him. Want me to spin a follow-up centered on the lawsuit by the 3 fired FBI officials and how that leadership vacuum showed up on the ground in Utah? Or do you want the tonal whiplash supercut of Patel's post, the Rouse report, the MSNBC walkthrough, and the AP hearing preview all in one punchy segment?